I told people their blood pressure numbers were controlled, that we were managing the condition, that this was the best modern medicine could offer, and I believed it. I'm Dr. John Marston, a physician who walked away from clinical practice not because I stopped caring, but because I realized something I couldn't unsee once it became clear. The system I was trained in was never designed to restore health. It was designed to regulate it, maintain it, keep it within acceptable parameters while the underlying damage continued quietly beneath the surface. I followed every protocol, prescribed medications like beta blockers, metoprolol, atenolol, because that's what the guidelines told me was appropriate. And on paper, they worked. Numbers improved, charts looked cleaner, but the people sitting across from me, they were getting weaker, slower, more dependent. It wasn't until one specific case, a moment that still wakes me up at night, that I finally understood what was actually happening inside the bodies of the people I was supposed to be saving. What I'm about to share with you is not in the pamphlets your doctor hands you. It's not emphasized in medical school. It exists in research, published, peer-reviewed, and then quietly set aside because it doesn't align with a system built around symptom management. And every single day that passes without this information is a day your body is losing ground in a battle it was never meant to fight this way. If you've ever been told your blood pressure is fine now because a number dropped, I need you to hear this clearly. That number may be hiding a deeper structural problem that no one is addressing. Case file 2017, a 68-year-old retired mechanic from Ohio. I'll call him RM to protect his privacy. He had been managing hypertension for nearly 12 years. His chart showed consistent compliance. Atenolol 50 mg daily, later increased to 100 mg, combined with a low-dose diuretic. His blood pressure readings? Impressive on paper, 128/78, sometimes even lower. He did everything right, took every pill, showed up to every appointment, followed dietary advice, walked every morning, even when it became harder, and yet by late 2017, something didn't add up. His energy was gone, not slightly reduced, gone. He described it as walking through wet cement. His exercise tolerance dropped. Climbing stairs left him breathless. His triglycerides had climbed. His fasting glucose crept upward, but each time he brought it up, he was told the same thing: normal aging. Adjust expectations. Stay the course. 6 months later, he collapsed in his driveway after standing up too quickly. A fall caused by a sudden drop in blood pressure. Orthostatic hypotension. He fractured his hip. Complications followed. His daughter called me after his hospitalization. She said, "He did everything you told him. How did this still happen?" And I didn't have an answer I believed anymore. Because what no one was looking at, what I wasn't trained to prioritize, was the underlying mechanism being disrupted for years while we focused on a surface-level number. The standard explanation is that high blood pressure is simply a matter of excessive force against arterial walls, and that reducing heart rate and contraction strength solves the problem. And on the surface, that sounds logical. Slow the pump, reduce the pressure. But here's what that explanation ignores completely. Your cardiovascular system is not just a pump. It is an integrated structural network, like a building's foundation, electrical system, and load-bearing framework working together. And when you interfere with one part of that system without addressing the integrity of the structure itself, you don't fix the problem. You mask it. Imagine a building where the foundation is beginning to crack. Instead of repairing the foundation, someone installs softer flooring upstairs so the vibrations feel less intense. The occupants think the problem is solved, but underneath, the cracks continue to spread. That's what's happening inside your body. Beta blockers reduce the visible stress, the measurable pressure, but they do not repair the structural integrity of the vascular system. In some cases, they may even accelerate hidden deterioration by altering metabolic pathways your body depends on for resilience. There is a deeper mechanism at play, one that involves how your blood vessels respond to stress, how your cells manage energy, and how your metabolic system adapts over time. I'm not going to give you the full picture yet, because before you understand the solution, you need to see exactly what's breaking down beneath the surface. Drop a 1 in the comments if you've been on blood pressure medication for more than 3 years and still don't feel like your energy or health has improved, because what I'm about to show you next will explain why. The standard explanation you've been given is simple. High blood pressure is a problem of force, and beta blockers reduce that force by slowing the heart. And on the surface, that sounds like solid engineering. Reduce the output, reduce the stress. But here's what that explanation ignores completely. The condition was never just about force. It was about structural failure at the level of the vascular system itself. Think of your circulatory system like the plumbing and electrical infrastructure of a high-rise building. Your arteries are not passive tubes. They are dynamic, living conduits lined with a specialized layer called the endothelium. This lining is responsible for producing nitric oxide, regulating dilation, maintaining flexibility, and responding to biochemical signals in real time. Now imagine that system as a network of pressurized pipes running through a building. Over time, due to poor maintenance, nutrient depletion, chronic inflammation, oxidative stress, the inner lining of those pipes begins to corrode. Not visibly at first. Not enough to trigger alarms, but enough to reduce flexibility. Enough to create microfractures in the structural integrity. This is what endothelial dysfunction actually is. And here's the part that changes everything. Beta blockers do nothing to repair that lining. They don't restore nitric oxide production. They don't reduce oxidative stress at the cellular level. They simply reduce the pressure moving through a compromised system. It's like lowering water flow in a building with rusted pipes instead of replacing the pipes themselves. The flow looks controlled, but the infrastructure continues to degrade. And when you look at tissue samples from patients with long-standing hypertension, what you actually see is not just thickened arterial walls. You see inflammatory signaling pathways activated, particularly the NF-κB pathway, driving chronic vascular inflammation. You see reduced activity of endothelial nitric oxide synthase, or ENOS, which is critical for vessel relaxation. You see increased levels of interleukin-6, a pro-inflammatory cytokine that accelerates vascular damage. First this happens, oxidative stress increases, often due to poor metabolic regulation. Then this happens, nitric oxide production drops, meaning your vessels lose their ability to dilate properly. Then the body compensates by increasing vascular resistance, and that resistance is what raises your blood pressure. But instead of fixing the nitric oxide deficiency, the standard protocol suppresses the heart's response. That triggers a cascade, reduced cardiac output, decreased exercise tolerance, lower mitochondrial activity, and that is where the fatigue begins. That is where the metabolic slowdown begins. That is where the real damage accelerates. A 2005 study published in The Lancet, the Ascot trial, which I want you to notice received surprisingly little mainstream emphasis compared to its implications, followed over 19,000 patients. It compared a beta blocker-based regimen to a calcium channel blocker-based regimen. The findings were not subtle. Patients in the beta blocker group had a significantly higher incidence of stroke and a 30% higher risk of developing new-onset diabetes, not marginal, not debatable, clinically significant outcomes in a large population. This was not a small pilot study. This was nearly 2 decades of follow-up data, published, peer-reviewed, and then slowly de-emphasized in treatment guidelines for uncomplicated hypertension. When I first read that study, I went back through my own patient files, and I started to see patterns I had missed for years. Case file 2019, a 72-year-old retired school teacher from Florida. I'll call her DK. She had been on metoprolol for 9 years. Her blood pressure was considered well controlled, 124/76, but her fasting glucose had risen from 92 to 118 over 3 years. Her triglycerides climbed, her HDL dropped. She complained of constant fatigue, brain fog. She stopped her daily walks because she just didn't have the energy anymore. Her physician, someone I know, someone I respect, told her it was aging, hormonal shifts, nothing to worry about. 6 months later, she was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And here's the mechanism no one explained to her. Beta blockers interfere with insulin sensitivity. They alter how your cells respond to glucose. They reduce peripheral blood flow to muscle tissue, which is one of the primary sites of glucose uptake. It's like shutting down part of the electrical grid in a building and expecting the remaining circuits to handle the full load. They can't. The system overheats, the metabolic burden increases, and over time, failure becomes inevitable. Drop a 2 in the comments if you've ever been told your rising blood sugar is just part of getting older while you're on medication for blood pressure, because that connection is not accidental, it is mechanistic. And we're not done, because there is a second mechanism, one that is even less discussed, and in many ways more dangerous, because it affects your body's ability to respond to stress in real time. Your autonomic nervous system is like the central wiring system of a building, controlling how different systems activate under different conditions. The sympathetic branch, your fight or flight response, is responsible for increasing heart rate, redirecting blood flow, preparing your body for action. The parasympathetic branch restores balance. Now imagine that wiring system has been partially disabled, not removed entirely, just suppressed. That's what beta blockers do. They blunt your sympathetic response. And in certain conditions, like after a heart attack or in arrhythmias, that can be life-saving. But in otherwise stable individuals, especially older adults, this suppression comes at a cost. Think of it like a building's emergency response system being dampened. The alarms are quieter, the sprinklers activate more slowly, the system becomes less responsive, so when a stressor occurs, standing up quickly, physical exertion, even emotional stress, the body cannot adjust as efficiently. Blood pressure drops, blood flow to the brain momentarily decreases. That's orthostatic hypotension, that's the dizziness, that's the fall risk. And this is not theoretical. A 2018 analysis using NHANES data, again, published, peer-reviewed, and rarely discussed in patient consultations, showed a significantly higher incidence of falls and balance-related issues in older adults on beta-blocker therapy compared to those on alternative antihypertensives. This is not a minor side effect. This is structural vulnerability, because when a 70-year-old falls, the consequences are not a bruise. It's a fracture, a hospitalization, a cascade of complications that can permanently alter quality of life. Case File 2021. A 75-year-old former construction supervisor from Arizona. I'll call him LT. He had been on atenolol for over a decade. His blood pressure, controlled, his lifestyle, active, until it wasn't. He began experiencing lightheadedness when standing, subtle at first, then more frequent. His physician adjusted his dose slightly, told him to stand up slower. 3 months later, he fell in his kitchen. Hip fracture, surgery. And what followed was not recovery. It was decline. His son told me he was fine before the fall, not perfect, but independent. Now he's never been the same. And all of this ties back to a system that focused on controlling a number instead of preserving functional integrity. Leave a 3 in the comments if you've ever felt dizzy or unsteady after standing while on blood pressure medication, because that is your body telling you something is off in the system regulation, and we're almost there. But before I give you the protocol, before I show you what actually restores these mechanisms, you need to understand one final piece, because without it, the solution won't make sense. There is a third mechanism. It involves mitochondrial function and cellular energy production. Most people never hear about it. Your doctor almost certainly didn't emphasize it, and it may be the most important factor determining whether your body rebuilds or continues to decline. And now we come to the part I wish I had given my patients 20 years ago. Not a temporary adjustment, not another layer of symptom control, but a structural protocol designed to restore the very mechanisms that were ignored while we focused on numbers on a chart. This is where everything shifts. Because once you understand that the real issue is endothelial breakdown, impaired nitric oxide production, disrupted metabolic signaling, and suppressed autonomic responsiveness, the solution is no longer about forcing the heart to behave differently. It's about rebuilding the system so it doesn't have to compensate in the first place. The first component is magnesium, specifically magnesium glycinate or magnesium taurate, not oxide, which is what most over-the-counter supplements contain and barely absorbs. The research-supported dose is 300 to 400 milligrams per day, taken in the evening. Here is exactly why. Magnesium is a cofactor in over 300 enzymatic reactions, including those that regulate vascular tone and insulin sensitivity. It directly supports endothelial nitric oxide synthase activity, the very enzyme responsible for producing nitric oxide in your vessels. Without sufficient magnesium, your vascular system is like a building with faulty wiring. Signals don't transmit correctly. Constriction overrides relaxation. Pressure builds. And when you restore magnesium levels, that wiring begins to function again, not partially, systemically. The second component is vitamin K2 in the MK7 form, at a dose of 100 to 200 micrograms daily, taken with a fat-containing meal, not vitamin K1, not unspecified vitamin K, MK7 specifically, because K2 activates matrix GLA protein, which directs calcium away from your arteries and into your bones where it belongs. Think of calcium like construction material. In the right place, it reinforces the structure. In the wrong place, it becomes debris clogging the pipes. Without K2, calcium deposits in arterial walls, contributing to stiffness and loss of elasticity, the exact conditions that elevate blood pressure at the structural level. A 2015 analysis from the Rotterdam study, one that again received almost no mainstream attention despite its implications, showed that higher K2 intake was associated with a 52% reduction in arterial calcification and a significant decrease in cardiovascular mortality. That is not a marginal effect. That is structural preservation. The third component is vitamin D3 at 2,000 to 4,000 IU daily, depending on baseline levels, paired with K2 because these two work in tandem. Vitamin D regulates over 1,000 genes, including those involved in immune modulation and inflammation control. But more importantly in this context, it enhances the expression of nitric oxide synthase and improves endothelial responsiveness. Without adequate D3, your body cannot maintain the signaling required for vascular flexibility. It's like having a blueprint for repair, but no foreman to execute it. The fourth component is omega-3 fatty acids, specifically EPA and DHA in a combined dose of 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams per day. Not generic fish oil with unclear labeling. Purified high EPA DHA formulations. These fatty acids directly reduce NF-κB pathway activation, lowering chronic inflammation at the vascular level. They also improve membrane fluidity in endothelial cells, allowing for better signaling and response to stress. Think of this as restoring the insulation around your building's wiring system. Without it, signals leak. With it, communication becomes efficient again. The fifth component, and this is the one most physicians never connect to blood pressure, is coenzyme Q10 in the ubiquinol form at 100 to 200 milligrams daily. CoQ10 is central to mitochondrial energy production. And here's the link. Your heart is the most energy-demanding organ in your body. When mitochondrial function declines, the heart compensates by increasing effort, increasing stress, increasing pressure. By restoring CoQ10 levels, you improve cellular energy output, reduce oxidative stress, and allow the heart to function efficiently without overcompensation. This is not theoretical. A 2007 study published in the Journal of Human Hypertension followed patients supplementing with CoQ10 and found an average reduction of 11 points in systolic pressure, not by suppressing the heart, by improving its efficiency. Timing matters. Magnesium in the evening to support parasympathetic activation and recovery, vitamin D3 and K2 with your largest meal for optimal absorption. Omega-3s split between meals to maintain steady anti-inflammatory effects. CoQ10 in the morning with food to align with energy production cycles. This is not random. This is structured. This is targeted. And this is where most people go wrong. They take the right ingredients in the wrong forms, at the wrong doses, at the wrong times, and then conclude that supplements don't work. That's not a supplement failure. That's a protocol failure. Case File 2022. A 70-year-old retired engineer from Texas. I'll call him SP. He had been on metoprolol for 8 years. Fatigue, rising glucose, declining activity. He came to me after seeing his third medication added to control his blood pressure. We implemented this exact protocol, nothing more, nothing less, while working with his physician to gradually reassess his medication needs. Within 4 months, his energy returned. His fasting glucose dropped from 110 to 94. His systolic pressure decreased by 14 points, not suppressed, stabilized. His physician reduced his medication dosage, and his response was something I will never forget. He said, "I feel like my body is working again instead of being forced. That is the difference." Now let me address what you're thinking because I've heard it all before. When your doctor tells you this isn't necessary, I want you to ask them to look up the Rotterdam study on vitamin K2 or the CoQ10 hypertension trials. Hand them the research. Most physicians will engage with data when it's put in front of them. But if it's dismissed without review, that tells you something important. If you're thinking this sounds expensive, understand this. This entire protocol can be implemented for a few dollars a day, less than a single prescription copay in many cases. And compare that to the cost of a fall, a fracture, a hospitalization. If you've tried supplements before and they didn't work, remember what I told you. Form and dose matter. Magnesium oxide is not magnesium glycinate. Generic fish oil is not high EPA DHA. Ubiquinone is not ubiquinol. These distinctions are not marketing. They are biochemical reality. And if you're thinking you can just change your diet, I agree that diet is foundational. But the soil your food is grown in has been depleted of magnesium and trace minerals for decades. You cannot reliably reach therapeutic levels through diet alone in today's environment. That is not opinion. That is agricultural data. Drop a 7 in the comments right now if you've been on blood pressure medication and still feel like your health is declining. I read every comment. Every single one. And your comment also tells the algorithm that this information matters, which means it reaches more people who are still in the dark about this. Send this to someone right now, not later, right now, who is on blood pressure medication and thinks their only option is to keep increasing the dose, because somewhere tonight, someone is going to fall, or be diagnosed with diabetes, or experience a complication that could have been prevented with this information. You have the ability to interrupt that outcome for one person. Before you leave, there is one more thing you need to understand. There is a fourth factor related to vascular stiffness and collagen integrity that determines how well this protocol works in your specific body. I've linked the next video on screen. Watch it, because without that piece, you're leaving results on the table. Subscribe to this channel. Not for me, but because information like this is buried unless enough people engage with it. Your subscription is how this reaches the people who need it most. I've also put together a complete written protocol with everything I've covered, the exact forms, doses, timing, and the research citations. It's in the description. Get it, review it, share it with someone you trust, and bookmark this video. Come back to it, watch it again. Because the second time is when the mechanism clicks, and when it clicks, everything changes. You now understand your body at a level most people never will. Use that, act on it, because the window to rebuild is real and it does not stay open forever.